Hello, everybody. It's Khankore the Aged Gamer, and we're here not doing a video game review or playthrough. We're here doing an actual board game preview. Yes, old school, analog, the kind of game that we all grew up with. Well, when I say we all, I mean anybody who's over the age of 40. And today we will be playing Dungeon Quest. Like I've noticed, this is a Fantasy Flight produced game, meaning, as typical with Fantasy Flight, we have a lot of high quality cards, content, chits, tokens, dice, figures, etc., etc., etc. Now, enough about Fantasy Flight and into the game. Dungeon Quest was, this is the second, or the revised edition, as you can see here. The very first edition was an old school game, still a lot more. Actually, I think they had a lot more stuff in it, but there's enough stuff here anyway. If you're a nostalgia kind of guy or gal, you can go ahead and look up for that very expensive, rare eBay find for the original version. But this one retails for, I think it's 59 bucks, so 60 bucks. Regardless, excuse me. We're going to dive right in. Now, this is a adventure dungeon dwelling game. It's not cooperative, meaning, well, it's not cooperative. You don't have a bunch of people working towards a common goal. What you do have is a single player and or multiplayer game. And what you do is you start in these little corners on the side. These are your entrances right here, the chambers. And these are the gateways into the yet unexplored dungeons. And within the dungeon lies a dragon, and in the center of the board is his treasure trove. There's all kinds of really cool cards that you can get. As you can see, we have the dungeon deck and the crypt deck, and we have a corpse deck, and we have the door deck, and so on and so forth, traps, etc. And a dragon deck, which simulates the dragon being in the middle, and various effects that can happen when we enter his lair and try to loot his hoard. Now, back to the gameplay mechanics is basically you can play this single player, which I will be playing today, or against another person or a group of people. And the object of the game is to actually explore the dungeon, survive its dangers, and then loot some treasure out of the dragon's lair, or by searching rooms throughout the dungeon, and then making it out of the dungeon before the time tracker sets for the day. And once it sets for the day, it has the potential to close the dungeon, meaning at the end of the day, if you roll this number or lower. Obviously, you can't roll lower than a 1, so what happens is I would enter this room and roll the dice, and if I got a 1, the game would end. In here, the game would end on a 2, 3, 4, etc. Regardless, once you're here, the game is over. And what you end up doing is, if you're still in the dungeon, you die. So you have to get out. The player who leaves the dungeon and acquires the most loot, treasure, and or loot through the search deck, and escapes with all the very valuable items, trinkets, weapons, etc. of the dungeon is the winner. If two people are tied, then it's the one who has the most loot cards, and if two people have the most loot cards, then those two players actually tie for win of the game. But like I said, we're going to be playing the one-player version. Now, first thing we're going to do, obviously, is set up the board, which I've already done here, and select a starting character, which I am going to be playing Hugo the Glorious. And here's Hugo's little miniature here, which is actually very detailed and well done, made out of some plastic, which is typical for the Fantasy Flight games. And we're going to put him on our hero card. And as you can see, Hugo is basically a paladin or knight. He has 16 health, as annotated by this card here. And he has a strength of 7, a agility of 4, a armor value of 9, and a luck value of 4. So he's not very agile or lucky, but he's very sturdy and strong. He also has a couple of abilities here, those being, if anytime he fights a monster, during combat they both render the same combat resolution choice, meaning when you do combat in this game, you don't roll dice, you choose a card, either melee, ranged, or magic, and compare it to whatever the monster. And if you're playing a multiplayer game, it's your player to your left chooses the card. Since I'll be playing solo, it's just going to be randomly determined. But you compare it against to what they actually choose, and then the damage result will tell you who receives the wound and how many wounds they receive. So it's kind of like a rock, paper, scissors mechanic. Not a lot of dice involved. And the winner then takes damage. If no one dies, then it continues. And at the beginning of the next combat phase, you have the opportunity to try to run away if you so choose, or you continue on until either you die or the monster dies. So let's get into it. Let me set the camera down here in its little pre-designated spot. Perfect. And we're going to go ahead and put our hero on the board. And we're going to start exploring. And we're going to start the game. So without further ado, let's get this baby rolling. Now, in this bag, I have a bunch of dungeon tiles. And there are literally a ton in here. I think there's probably one for every square on the board, and this represents a square. So the way you play the game is, obviously there's no outline yet of where we're going to go. So we reach in and we randomly produce a tile. Now we're going to be playing with the advanced rules today, which allow us to, perfect. So when you place a tile, you put an available slot with the icon closest to the room that you're leaving. The little white icon here shows an arrow. Now, I will then move into that spot. Now, these are catacombs. There's nothing remarkable, in other words, about that particular tile. There's no little icon on the actual tile telling me to do something unique and different. As comparison, this one says that I can search in this area. There happens to be a gate here, which will require a strength test to open. And also I would have to draw one of the dungeon deck cards to find out if there's anything in this room, and if so, what. So, since there's nothing remarkable on here, I can continue to move on into the next tile until I run into something remarkable. And all that's on the same turn. Oh, and first of all, I forgot, we need to advance the sun marker one space. So our timer, that's how we start out. Now, since we're in this room, any open it, and this is part of the advanced rules I was talking about, any open tiles will allow us to place a tile into the adjoining rooms that you can see in via a hallway. And that simulates you having a torch. And whenever you place a tile, you always place it with the little white arrow adjacent to the hallway that it's leaving. Now, we've placed these two tiles and we can see into them. Now we got a choice. If we were to go left, this tile indicates that, yes, we do have a gate. So it would require a strength test to get through. This one, on the other hand, seems kind of odd. You would think, oh, it's a dead end. But in reality, this is a special room, and this is called a rotating chamber. And once you enter it, you rotate it 180 degrees. So we're going to go ahead and elect to continue our movement into the rotating chamber, and it's going to spin 180 degrees. Bonk. All right. So now that we're seasick and have no idea where we're going, there's nothing remarkable in this room other than the search icon. And so we're going to continue on. And what we're going to do is, since our torchlight is casting its glow upon the chamber beyond, we are going to throw out another tile. Now look, there happens to be three other ways out of this room, but one leads into the wall, so we can't legally move into that room. Also, if you'll notice that there's a really, really cool little icon in the middle, or I'm sorry, in the lower right, which indicates that that is a dungeon room. So we've done our action in this room. There's nothing remarkable in, so we're going to be moving into this room. Now then, since we're in this room, we can see beyond. Bum, bum, bum. Bum, 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 bum. And this way it looks like there's a cave in, and this way it looks like there is a spider web. Now, this game is not only known for its ability to be played by one person, solo play if you will, but also it's basically a big death trap. This game is extremely tough. It's very, very hard on the player. I have died in the very first starting room. I got a curse, and through the dungeon deck, and then at the same time it was a tile where I had to do a test to proceed beyond, and the test was on one of the attributes that I had a very low score in. So I spent the entire game trying to get out of this room and never succeeding. And every time you fail, see, there is a little built-in mechanism too that lends you aid. For instance, I have a very low luck skill, and if I were testing against luck on 2 dice, I would have to roll a 4 or under, which is very hard to do. Well, sometimes not for me because I tend to roll a lot of 1s, but regardless, you would end up failing. But every time you fail, you get one of these cool little counters. And these cool little counters, if you elect to spend them, will actually increase your dice roll by, or decrease, I'm sorry, either your dice roll. You can look at it 2 ways. It either decreases your dice roll by 1 or increases your attribute by 1, making it easier in either regard. So, and I can't remember the way the rule is specifically written as far as which it does, but regardless, it has the same effect. It's easier. It's 1 unit easier for you to complete. And so if you keep failing, you can continue to build these up. And you don't have to use them. You can use them at your leisure, so you can have amassed quite a little pile, and thereby either guaranteeing an easy roll or helping you get through a difficult one. All right. Oh, and at the beginning of the game, you draw a rune card. And the rune cards are pretty cool. Let me read this one to you. This one actually says that I get to discard this instead of resolving an ambush card. And we might even get to see what those are. But now I'm in this room. There is a little icon here that says I have to draw a dungeon card from the dungeon deck. And this particular card says, you may loot the body for 1 treasure because I found a dead adventurer. If I choose to do so, I have to draw a corpse card. Well, that sounds interesting. So let's go ahead and resolve that. We're going to put, what is it now? Treasure, yeah, okay. So we're going to draw we're going to search the body right now, and we're going to draw a corpse card. And the corpse cards are right here. So we found a corpse, and we get, unstable potion, and it's a loot. Now, the card reads, you may discard the potion at the start of your status phase and roll 2 dice. Now, I didn't explain the phases to you, which is an oversight, but at the beginning of the game, there's a status phase, which is the first part of the game, where you resolve statuses, meaning anything that starts at the beginning of the turn, prior to the beginning of your turn, or any card text which allows you to take an action prior to moving. Now, on any turn, your hero can do 1 action of the following actions. He may move, he may search, or he may do combat, I believe, are the other 3. So let's see what the rest of this text says. You may discard this potion at the start of your status phase and roll 2 dice. Now, on a roll of a 2, you die. See what I'm talking about? Immediately just, okay, game over. Goodbye, thanks for playing. Restart, reshuffle. On a roll of 3 to 5, suffer 4 wounds. Ow. Now, my little guy here has 16, or I'm sorry, Hugo the Glorious has 16. So that is a quarter of his wounds right off the bat. All right, 6 to 7, nothing happens. Okay, that's favorable. 8 to 10, heal up to 3 wounds. Okay, great. And then in the extreme rare event that I would roll an 11 or 12, I would heal every wound I've so far accumulated. So that's actually pretty good. That's a loot. Okay, so it says I may discard this potion at the start of my status phase. Okay, so we're going to put that in our little loot pile here. Bonk. It's in our inventory. And that's a loot. So we actually could, at this point, leave the dungeon. And if we did so, we would retain 1 loot. And if I was playing against other people, then we would compare loots at the end. Now, I have no dollar value associated with this. I only have 1 loot. But obviously, I'm not going to do it. And if I were to leave now, then I would, in essence, beat the game. But what an empty victory. We've been filming for, 20 minutes now? Yay. Anyway, we're going to continue and press our luck. Okay, so now we have to advance that was all basically Oh, that was all basically 2 turns. Sorry. Okay, so now it's going to be our 3rd turn. We're going to move this up, and now we're going to resolve what we need to do. Now, this particular room, we can't go this way. We can either go forward into the rubble, or we can go to our left into the spider web. And I think we're going to go left into our spider web. Bonk. Now, the spider web is unique, and it says it's a unique square, and it says immediately move again, ignoring doors and the ports, the gates. Okay. Excuse me. If I exit through any hall other than the hall I entered, test for strength. If I succeed, I can continue on normally, and if I fail, my turn ends. If I begin my turn here, I must successfully test for strength before I can move. All right. So we're going to try to continue on this way, and I think that'll be the most direct route, obviously, to the treasure room. So we're going to attempt to continue on. Now I had to do a strength test, and my strength test requires dice, which are 2 here, and I'm going to be testing against a 7. So I have to roll under a 7 to continue, or 7 or under to continue. Let's see how we do. That's cocked, but regardless, I'm going to, even if I re-roll it and get a 6. Okay, so we got a 4. We passed the test. And testing is the stat compared to your roll, and equal to or less than is a success. All right, so we are successful. Yay. Now we can continue on. Now, what we forgot to do is obviously we have a torch, and so I'm going to draw 3 tiles in order. Boom. 1, 2, 2, and 3. Okay, so after I get that in there, tight fit. Now, as you can see, our dungeon is developing. Now, I elected to go this way when in essence I could have seen where I was going to go, and I still will obviously go that way. Now, this particular tile, I have to actually stop in because it's got a little dungeon card icon, which I'll have to resolve. But you see, it also has a stairwell. And these tiles have a lot of information on them. They're not just decoration, or not only decoration. So this is an entrance to the catacombs. Now, the catacombs is a very unique thing, meaning it's very dangerous. It's wrought with the some of the most extreme dangers in the game, but it also has some of the chances for the most reward. Now, whether we want to go down there or not is going to be on whether I want to show you during this gameplay video how it works, and the answer is yes. So before we do that, we're going to get a couple mechanics out of the way. That effectively ends our turn by entering here, and so we're going to move again. Now, this is the beginning of our status phase. I could, if I want, use this unstable potion, and that would give us a chance to heal, but we're not wounded yet. So it's a good thing we have that, because we're going to be diving into the catacombs now. And the way that's done is we have a little movement arrow. We take our character off of the board, and we put this little movement arrow, and we choose a direction. As you can see, it's teardrop shaped. It has a little picture of a character on it, and the pointy end is the direction you want to travel. Now, the way it works is you no longer move as normal. Is every time you draw a catacombs card, now that we're in the catacombs, we can't get out until we draw a catacombs card that says we can get out. And what we do is we continue to resolve cards until we get one of those that says we can get out. And then we count how many cards we have in our pile, and that's how far we've moved. And then we can rotate our little icon to point in any direction, 90 degrees, right or left. Can't go back the way you came. And then either left or right, basically, or straight ahead. And you roll the dice and then count that many. Let's say, for instance, let's say we resolved 4 cards. 1, 2, 3, 4. And we were in this square. And then we decided to come this way. And then we rolled our dice. And we got a 2. 1, 2. That would put us here. We then draw a tile, put it right here, and then place our character back on. In the event you kind of mess up and end up over against a wall, if you do it on the part where you roll the dice and you hit a wall, then you end up taking damage for every point you rolled over. But if you do it on the first part of the phase where you're just basically tunneling, once you hit the wall, you stop. And that's how that works. So we're going to put our little deal here. And since we entered, we're going to draw a catacombs card. Oh, and right off the bat, we run into a horde of rats. You are overwhelmed by a horde of verminous rats. Test armor. If you fail, suffer 4 wounds. Now, see what I mean about how that, again, that would be a quarter of our hit points. So let's get this out of the way. We're going to resolve.